Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's kick off our video with a story about the wild world of homeowners associations. Our OP, the homeowner, finds themselves in a battle of wits with their HOA over a seemingly simple rule: no overnight parking on the streets. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. HOA and parking fines. I own the house my parents live in and on occasion have to deal with their HOA. The HOA in my parents' neighborhood is by no means unbearable, but they do have their quirks. One quirk is no overnight parking on the streets. No biggie. My parents have 2 cars and park in their driveway or garage. However, sometimes people have no regard for the rules and park on the street. One of the favorite spots is next to my parents' house. They live on a corner. In 2014, the HOA hired a new management company and they decided to get tough on cars. Now, a reasonable HOA would put notices on the cars that were parked overnight on the street. Well, these guys decided to mail notices to the houses the cars were parked by. We start getting notices about the cars that all park overnight next to my parents' house. I emailed the HOA, said these are not my parents' cars, and suggest they put the notices on the cars instead of assuming they belong to the houses they're parked near. More notices came and I sent more emails. I would get assurances that they would take care of it and let their neighborhood watchdog, their words, know that those were not my parents' cars. Then one day we get a notice that we were being fined. That's when I stopped being nice about the notices. The HOA took off the fine, but then suggested my parents watch the street by the side of their house, and when people parked there, to follow them, note what house they went to, and report it back to the HOA. I not so nicely told them the only window that looked out that side of the street was in the bathroom, and I was not going to ask my 70-year-old mother to stand on her bathtub all day playing spy for the HOA. And gee, how about you just leave notices on the damn cars? The issue stopped, but I'm of the opinion that one must be deemed functionally slow in order to be qualified to work for the company that manages this HOA. It's frustrating when organizations like HOA seem to prioritize enforcement over practicality and understanding. Hopefully the issue's been resolved and your parents can enjoy their home without unnecessary interference from the HOA. And our second story. So you're claiming I defrauded the company by booking an extra 3 minutes? No problem. I worked for a water company for 25 years and was one of their most productive repair crews. That is until the new manager, let's call him Mr. Numbnuts, started. We had a monthly rota where you're on call for 1 week in 4 for emergency repairs out of hours. On the day in question, I started work at 7:30 a.m. on a Friday and finished work at 3:15 a.m. Saturday morning, so a pretty long-butted shift. I get to work Tuesday morning and get called into the office by Mr. Numbnuts and informed that according to my vehicle tracker, I'd left the yard at 3:12 a.m. and not 3:15 a.m., which is an attempt to defraud the company. As you can imagine, I was absolutely fuming at this level of bullcrap. I told him that at the time I was covered in mud and sweat and just wanted to get home after completing a monster shift for the company, and was he genuinely making a crap storm over 3 minutes? He said he was making me aware that I could be fired for it. Cue malicious compliance. I said that if we're going to be this petty, you can take me off the emergency contact list for extra coverage, and I won't be starting 20 minutes early each day either. I'll now be clocking in at exactly 7:30 a.m., and I shall be heading out at exactly 5:30 p.m. No deviation whatsoever, and you can explain to your bosses why productivity is down and you're struggling to get coverage for emergencies. We'll then see how important your 3 minutes are when they're costing the company money. Little did I realize at the time, but the guy's job was bonus-related and linked to our productivity, which tanked after that because all the other gangs followed my lead, except the brown-nosed gangs, obviously. 3 weeks go by with an absolute crap show in customer service complaints about their work not being carried out in a timely manner. My productivity dropped from 7 jobs per day down to 4. And Mr. Numbnuts gets called in by his bosses to try and explain WTF is going on. He tried to spin some BS story that I'd turned all the guys against him for no reason and that this was the result. Little did he know that I'd actually trained his boss when he first started with the company 15 years before and wanted to come out and find out what we do and experience how hard the job is. He surprised me by working a full month on the repair crews before going back to the office. Anyhow, the boss calls me in to find out what's really going on, so I explained how he'd used the tracker to monitor what time I'd left the yard and that I'd guesstimated my finish time and overestimated by 3 minutes because I was absolutely knackered after working a shift from hell on call. Conclusion, manager was let go for misuse of the tracking system, as it's only supposed to be used for emergencies and not monitoring, and we had our on-call system reviewed to cut the hours we were having to work. And our next story. It hurt, but it was hilarious. I've had some interesting encounters with fellow customers over the years. I guess I just have the I work here and the I'm an easy target vibe. This particular story stuck out in my mind for some time because of how disgusting people can be. I would just use the typical denotations of people's names such as Karen and Jerk for the main offenders. I was browsing the pharmacy section at Target looking for anything to help alleviate the pain in my throat. While I was told by the Minute Clinic doctor that I did not have strep, my throat was still extremely swollen and burning. As such, I was avoiding speaking. As I was examining the throat lozenges that were supposed to numb your throat, I heard a hissing noise behind me. I looked over and saw a tall woman in her mid-40s standing there with a cart and a man beside her. I smiled at her apologetically and stepped back so she could pass in the narrow aisle. Karen, snappy tone, do you know where the Pediasure is? Me, points to the point just behind her and her husband where the different flavors of Pediasure were. They look behind them and I step back to the throat lozenges and grab 2 brands and a throat numbing spray when I hear that hissing noise again. I look up to see Karen staring at me while Jerk was putting the Pediasure in the cart. Karen, what's the matter? Can't you speak? Me, taken back by her rude tone and her lack of observation skills, I simply shake my head and turn to grab some cough drops. Jerk, where'd you escape from? Once again, I was taken aback by the rude tone and weird question, but I was hurting so bad I decided to ignore him and go look at the vitamins around the corner. They weren't done, though. They proceeded to creep behind me with the cart and made awful comments about people who were mute, that my mother should have taught me some manners, and laughing each time they crept closer in an attempt to intimidate me. I'm not a nice person. I'm just going to be honest. If someone messes with me, I will make sure they never want to do it again. At this point, I turned around, pissed off, and am told that when I'm angry, you know it. Something in my face made them both physically take a step back. I opened my mouth and let out the most painful and satisfying scream I've ever let out. They both jerked back as I abruptly cut it off and gave them my most evil grin. They booked it away from me, leaving their cart. The pharmacist was covering her mouth, having witnessed the whole thing, trying and failing not to laugh. I winked at her and walked to the front of the store. To this day, I have no idea where they went after that, if they reported me or if security was ever called. I just paid for my stuff and walked out. I've been there many times and no one has stopped me or called me out for being the screamer. All I imagine is you spinning around staring at them with a devil is pissed look and then screaming like, yeah! Then they run off shouting, "Be gone, Satan! Be gone, Satan! Run!" And our last story. My mother has forged my signature on checks and stolen $60K. I kind of don't know where to begin. Right now, I'm trying to figure out what kind of attorney I need. My mother's been forging my signature on checks addressed to me since I was 18. There have been 4 checks and the amount of $15,000 each, totaling to $60K. The money I get from a lawsuit from when I was a minor. I had no idea about any of it because I was really young when it happened. I've since reported her to the insurance company's fraud department, my local police. I live in Illinois, she lives in California, my bank, as well as the UPSIS, and she's been stealing and opening my mail to get these checks. I decided to send her/my dad an email outlining everything I know with the proof, the forged check and bank statements. She texted me this morning denying all of it, but in the same breath said I owed them that money because they raised me. I'm starting to ramble. She has since decided to just ignore me, so I'm going to look into an attorney. Edit. A lot of the story's been left out. The injury occurred when I was 4 or 5. I'm now 23. When the lawsuit happened, my mother was not even legally my mother yet, as I was later adopted by her. The check started coming when I was 18. I didn't even know about the injury lawsuit, let alone that I was owed money, so I had no idea that any checks were coming. I just found out about this very, very recently. I know the name of the company paying me out, but I don't even know the name of the establishment where I was hurt as a kid. Double edit. I filed a police report in my state as the PD where she lived said it's technically out of their jurisdiction. I'm a bit confused because the crime was committed there, but they said the crime has to be reported based on where the victim is. I filed a fraud report with the insurance company who's been sending the checks to my mother's address. Everything's been updated to my address and information, and a passcode was put on the account that only I know. They're mailing me paperwork with copies of the forged checks as well as an affidavit I have to sign regarding the fraud. I made a report with my bank. They were jerks and said there's nothing they can do and were extremely short with me. Finally, I made a report with UPS Investigation Department. While the checks were sent to my mother's address, where I lived as a kid, they still had my legal name on them, not hers, so she opened mail that wasn't addressed to her. Triple edit. While the crime was committed in California and I live in Illinois, I believe the settlement was in Colorado. That's where I lived before I was adopted, and that's where the accident occurred. My aunt was the one who told me about the money and helped me find out who the insurance company was. My aunt, mom's sister, told me that when my now mom and dad adopted me, they had to submit paperwork to prove guardianship with the insurance company, and that's when the company changed the address from my childhood home in Colorado to their home in California. Even though my adopted mom committed the crimes, my adopted dad knew everything that was going on. They both profited off the money, and they did a huge backyard remodel. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.